Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Mission Yozakura Family Season 1, Episode 17. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. It's a very sweet, lovely episode, because obviously Taiyo's still dealing with the aftermath of the Yozakura blood, and his body has not fully recovered yet, and he's still in midst pain. He's like, I'm going to go to school, and then he just crumples from immense pain. Mitsumi can't go back to school quite yet because it's like, well, we gotta wait because obviously we know Tampopo's out there targeting you, so we have to kind of keep you even more closer at home just so we can make sure we're able to help you. But they don't want Taiyo going alone, especially in the state that he's in. So Nanao decides to go, and this involves transforming into his real form. So I was aware of Taiyo, the way Nanao looks, only because this was a while back. Basically when I was trying to get to know the characters' names and memorize them early on in the season, I looked up the characters' names on the Mission Yozakura Wikia. And I to avoid spoilers, I only looked at the Yozakura family, but the picture they have for Nanao is what he looks like in his original form. It's just him from the manga. And so I already knew, but I talked about this previously. I figured he had an owl from Alphonse from Full Metal Alchemist situation. I was expecting it to be that's what he originally looked like, very much like Al, but it's just this mutated form is what he looks like now. I didn't know he could transform it back to his original state, which comes with its own complication, but it gives us a lot more insight into Nanao. We already knew he could handle any poison and stuff like that. His body can break that down. But it turns out that the way his body works, its constitution is too much for him to handle on a normal basis. So the bigger form that he normally is a byproduct of he mutates his body so that it can handle the uniqueness of having to change himself physically and mutate himself in that regard. He stabilizes himself in his more mutated form, which is a bigger form, which begs the question, what does it look like under the bucket hat, which I think is interesting because we got glimpses of it, his face, how different it looked. We just never got to see what the mutation fully looks like underneath his hat. I'm sure that's going to probably come up later on in the story when he fully unleashes his mutations. I'm sure it's going to be kind of probably similar. I didn't even thought about that though. He is probably a lot because the first thing that came across my mind because of him enlarging his arm was once again Luffy from One Piece, but using another One Piece person example would be like Chopper and his transformations using his medicine. So it'd be kind of similar to that in that regard. So. But either way, it's actually really sweet to see him at school living his life as a normal kid. You even see that he has friends and everything, and you see Taiyo kind of super happy, yeah. Which, speaking of friends, we see Taiyo just hanging out with his group of friends. And I'm curious if that's something the manga covered and maybe the anime hasn't. Or maybe it's just handled the exact same way in the manga. I'm curious. But the fact is, I'm surprised they didn't make more of a bigger deal, considering that was kind of a starting off point of right, Taiyo only ever really interacted with Mitsumi at school, after losing his family. So the fact is that he's chummy with everyone. They're talking about school and stuff like that. You see, he's still kind of a little nervous because he's quiet most of the conversation. He has one line of dialogue and he's like, oh, I'll catch up with you guys. That's about it. So I thought that was fascinating. But yeah, he ended up running into Nanao, who's going through, the mutation is kind of taking over. It's something he has to constantly keep an eye on. And he has to, he does the, I forgot what he was saying, but the components of the bodies, he listed all, not components, I forgot the exact thing he does, but he has a very specific chant to help himself calm down, to kind of because I think when he probably, the mutation is naturally going all the time and it gets out of his grasp, but if he kind of really focuses on it, he can kind of keep it mildly under control. But the sad thing is that he has a permanent solution for this, but if he does it, he can never revert back to his original form. It'll completely stabilize him, but he'll have to always be in that mutated state he's always in, that we typically see him in, and he'll never be able to go back to his original form. And he says that, but he's right, I was able to kind of enjoy this day, but eventually it was going to have to come, so I'm going to tell big brother Kishiro to withdraw me from school. And then I love he looks up at Taiyo, and Taiyo's got streams of tears coming out of his eyes. He's like, yo, you guys are always helping me out, but I had no idea you were going through this, little bro. Like, the fact is, like, I had no idea you had this type of struggle, and so I'm not going to let you compromise your time at school because, like, you enjoy it here, you have friends. I don't want, because he even says, Nano's like, I'm the one that really pushed and insisted I go to school, so he had to really fight for it to come here anyway, so Taiyo doesn't want him to lose that, you know? And so it's like, right, I got your back all the way through. So I love that the entire episode, every time he has a reaction, like Tayo's there, they hit him with a tranquilizer. First, it was like outside of the classroom, and I love his clothes get ripped, and the teacher's like, what happened to you? He's like, I think it's a defect. It's like, what kind of defect is that? And just constantly giving them thumbs up outside in the baseball field underneath the grass camouflage. I was like, I love that whole thing of him just striking from all these different angles. And just, once again, a little showcasing of like, right, Tayo's gotten way, way, way better at it. Just the fact is he's able to kind of do that so publicly and hidden is just kind of showcasing his skills. We also get introduced to the head of the biology club, which Nano is a part of, is Kitasato, and she doesn't really care too much about humans, which I think it speaks volumes that she cares about Nano, though. She really doesn't pay attention to humans except for Nano, and I love the whole, like, checking his temperature. It's like, oh, your temperature's normal, but now it's suddenly rising. You might actually have a cold, but he was acting like that around her because he was like nervous. And I was like, oh, love interest situation there. I was just like, oh, that's really sweet. But sadly, later on, her snake Basilisk ends up eating one of Nano's pills and ends up going through a mutation. So both of them work together to track it down. At the same time, Taiyo's gathering up all the animals, and I love Nano's like, yeah, be careful, they're very poisonous. He's like, what? I've already gotten bitten by so many of them, which I was like, well, shouldn't be too bad. I mean, you've also gone through your Yozakura poison training, so granted, we see later on he's still pretty jacked up and even saying like, right, this was good training for poison. It's like, yeah, just more animal poisons that you'll be more resistant to in the future, so it benefited. But I'm sure your natural poison resistance after everything you've been through at the Yozakura has kind of helped out in that regard. But Nano's blaming himself because he's like, right, it's because of all of this. Kitasato, like, he knows, like, Kitasato only cares about, like, animals, and, like, her best friend is Basilisk because he's always around her neck. So it's like, right, because of that, I feel like I've hurt you and him. He's in so much pain right now, and if I don't, like, fix this, like, it could get worse. So luckily, the cells in his body help Basilisk's mutation. So I thought Nano was immediately able to just jet out of there, but it turns out Taiyo helped him. After Kitasato saw it, it's like, well, she's not the most observant with people, but she is observant when it comes to Nano, so she definitely saw the mutation. And for Nano, as it's getting worse and worse, it's like, right, I got to pull the trigger on this. But Taiyo was able to calm him down. I love the needle went through his head and everything. It was like, nah, I got you, bro. You know, I remember I had a little brother before, and so I know that you're a perfectly normal kid. You know, I know my little brother Nano is like a perfect. And it's just like, oh, it's such a beautiful, sweet moment. And he was able to calm Nano down. It's like, right, you don't have to sacrifice your normal daily life, because he's like, I made a promise I was going to stick this out and see to it that you're taken care of. And Kitasato happened to be on the rooftop seeing all this, and I love the reveal of like, she's so, her response to it is, oh my god, you can do a metamorphosis, because she's coming at it from, she doesn't care about looking at things from a human lens, she only looks at things from an animal lens, and just from her own unique perspective, even saying like, oh, Taiyo's around Nano all the time, you must want to join the biology club. Let's not even just make you a member on paper, like, it don't have to just be on paper, I'm dragging you and we can sign you up. So it's going to be interesting to see what that's like going forward. It makes you wonder how often Nano doesn't get to go to school because of everything. I mean, especially because, like, well, he goes to the same school as Taiyo, but it's just like he just probably never noticed. I mean, they're different grades, so they wouldn't be in the same section. Like he'd see Matsumi all the time, but I mean, Nanao probably doesn't go all the time. He probably is probably able to come up with excuses of like maybe he has a weak constitution, which is true because of his mutation thing. So it's probably like they're probably able to use that as an excuse for him not to go to school all the time. Probably reverting back to his original form. We saw how much of a toll it was taking. Even Mitsumi noticed, she was like, oh, that took longer than normal to revert back to your original form. So it's probably like harder and harder to rein that in. Probably the more often he does it too. But eventually it'll probably, like I said, it's going to get to the point in the story. I don't know if it's going to be by the end of the story or not, but there probably will be a desperate situation where he probably will need his perma solution to stabilize himself, especially when the time comes. But we'll see what the story gets to that point. But what I also thought was interesting is something that's never really talked about is the whole element of Mitsumi and Taiyo being married. Because he's like, oh, it's supposed to be a top secret. Because he's like, oh, like, I can't say that me and Nanao are siblings because that's supposed to be a secret. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Because, I mean, it makes sense because, like, no one knows that Taiyo and Mitsumi are married, obviously. But it's like, I guess it's like you don't want to put even more of a target on your back, I guess. But I guess because it's like, I mean, it's spy stuff, so it's not like, because everything with the marriage and them being a family is all related to being Yozakura's, which is the spy stuff. So it classifies all that stuff. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Because then it'd be like, well, I'm sure there's going to be characters, maybe some of the side characters, like, or more minor characters, or that might eventually find out the truth about it. But I just thought that was so fascinating to know, like, right. It's understandable why no one knew about Mitsumi and him being married. So it was like, of course, they wouldn't know about the rest of the family either. So, because no one still because to be fair, it's like no one knew that Kishiro was Mitsumi's brother until like Taiyo found it. Because even he didn't know until like the beginning of the series. So it makes sense that they keep a lot of that hush hush. Once again, maybe it's just a spyhood thing of you got to keep family stuff to family stuff because it all pertains to spyhood, or maybe it's specific to the Yosakuras because it helps keep their identities as like least publicly known as possible. I don't know. It was just kind of an interesting thing. So that's the main crux of the episode. We also cut back to the Yosakura Manor, where we find out that they're, souping up the place because they have to do like a rebuild considering like everything that went down last episode, but also like, the attack on the mansion and stuff. So it's like we need to bolster our defenses more. And obviously knowing that it was Tenpopo, like Rin and them are willing to help out. Was it Hinagaku? Are willing to help out and look at like track their movements. I think it's interesting that Futaba doesn't mention like, once again, Kishiro confronted him, but it's like, even Futaba had an idea that it was their dad, but the fact is she didn't relay that information to Rin, I thought was interesting. But it's like, yeah, you're kind of allies and enemies at the same time, so like there's very specific information you're going to keep to yourself. Like I said, even though Kishiro confronted him, I'm sure, because even Shinzo recognized from Taiyo's wounds who did it. So they all know. Just the fact is they didn't share that information I thought was kind of interesting. But maybe they did and it's just not in the confines of the episode. Who knows? I just thought that was fascinating. I do love that Mitsumi has been making she was concocting something early on, and Kingo and Shion were watching her do it. And it's like, oh, is she trying to make someone sick? Is she trying to poison someone? But she was actually trying to make it was a recipe to make some food that would help Taiyo's exhaustion from the Yosakura blood. It seems like the end result is you are refreshed, but the problem is that it initially knocks you out. And when Nanao gets home, he's like, right, let me go make a concoction that kind of acts as an antidote. So thought that was kind of neat. And poor Mitsumi just trying to do something nice for Taiyo, and it just kind of backfired. I do love that Ren's the only one not affected, but it's like, why isn't she? It's like, well, I guess because she's tireless. It's like, I guess that's the only explanation we're going to get on that front. So once again, just another cute, beautiful episode, just a deepening of the Yosakura, specifically giving us an opportunity to learn more about Nanao and his constitution, and just developing even more that big brother, little brother relationship between Taiyo and Nanao. So next episode seems to be a hot springs episode, so that's going to be most likely some of that, as we kind of got with a little hint of it at the end. It ended up it showed Shion taking her towel out, and it ended up being Kingo. So I'm sure there's gonna be probably some of that, but it seems like it's gonna be like a, your typical anime-esque fan servicey type of episode, maybe, but it's also like going to be like some fun time shenanigans. So I'm always fine with like your beach episodes, your hot spring episodes. Obviously this doesn't just apply to just straight up anime and manga. Trails is notorious for them too. There's quite a few in the only one main one in the Cold Steel series, at least. But anyway, tangents and all that aside, I'm excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.